And this is not just about, you know, the attack on the Capitol. There's a much, much larger issue here, which is the end of democracy and the end of America. I mean, that's literally what we're talking about here. It turns out that, you know, based on these latest indictments, I mean, this is just jaw-dropping stuff. Just as a starting point, this morning, a guy called into C-SPAN. And he said he was Tom from Woodbridge, Virginia. And he says, I was there on January 6th. I work in the intelligence community and have for many, many years. There were experienced agitators. Now, he's not talking about the Trump fans who broke down the doors and smashed the windows and smeared feces on the wall, on the walls in the U.S. Capitol and damaged some of the paintings and you know, it's like killed 5 people, basically. He's not talking about them. He's trying to say that there were Antifa people there, or Black Lives Matter people there. He says, there were experienced agitators that took advantage of a great deal of anxiety and passion in the country and did it on purpose to defame the presidency of Donald Trump. He says, I know that for a fact. And then he starts talking about how Trump's going to get reelected in 2024. This is what this new indictment has laid out. This was just filed. It was originally filed on May 26th, but we just saw the public-facing piece of it yesterday afternoon. This is an indictment of the people. Remember on the video of January 6th, there was a crowd shot, and through the crowd was snaking this they call it a stack, this group of people who were all wearing camouflage and body armor, and each one had a hand on the shoulder of the person in front of them, and they were moving through the crowd toward the front, toward the Capitol building. Those are the people that are on the receiving end of this indictment. And they were communicating with each other with what they thought was a secure messaging app, but hey, there's no such thing in the United States. I mean, federal law since the Patriot Act, et cetera, basically says that you cannot run a messaging app that the federal government can't snoop on. It's just there is no such thing. So, you know, we've got them, as it were. Obviously, that's a whole other conversation about, you know, privacy. But they said that they were staging. First of all, they had a quick reaction force just across the river in Virginia. Now, keep in mind, guns are illegal in D.C. D.C. has, I believe, the most restrictive gun laws in the nation. That's why the Heller decision was, you know, pointed right at D.C. So you can't bring guns into the District of Columbia. Even Republican legislators are okay with that. So what these guys did is they brought all these weapons into Virginia, into this hotel in Virginia, and a bunch of them stayed back in Virginia because here was the plan. I mean, I'll just tell you in my own words, then I'll go back and read some of the documents to you. The plan was storm the Capitol, attack, you know, try to stop Congress from certifying the election. And in the process, because there was a big Trump rally, wherever there's a big Trump rally, you know, where Donald Trump is speaking, there's always protesters, counter-protesters. So they were assuming that there would be anti-Trump protesters who would show up at that rally that Trump spoke at, the one that was in part paid for by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's wife's organization. The assumption was that there would be anti-Trump protesters. And if they could get in a fight, even 5 guys, even a small fight with anti-Trump protesters, then Donald Trump could declare that a crisis and invoke the Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act would allow him to declare martial law, just shut the country down, and to say, okay, that's it. Congress is suspended. Everything is suspended. I mean, it's there. It's in the law. And that would be the end of democracy in America. And that would be the beginning of Donald Trump running this country basically, you know, the way that Orban runs Hungary or Putin runs Russia or, you know, fill in the blank, right? Pick your country that was a democracy for a while and isn't anymore. This is Oath Keepers leader Stuart Rhodes was in on this conversation, and he had been hanging out with Michael Flynn, publicly calling for Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act. And this is from one of their messages. He says, if the fight comes, let the fight come. Let Antifa, if they go kinetic on us, which is kind of military talk for, you know, aggressive action. If they go kinetic on us, then we'll go kinetic on them. Let the fight start there. That'll give President Trump what he needs, frankly. If things go kinetic, good. If they throw bombs at us and shoot us, great. Because that brings the president his reason and rationale for dropping the Insurrection Act. So our posture is going to be that we're posted outside of D.C., awaiting the president's orders. We hope he will give us the orders. We want him to declare an insurrection and to call us up as the militia. So this was their plan. Can you imagine what would happen if they had pulled that off? If Donald Trump had declared an insurrection, what are the Democrats going to do at that point? Sue at the Supreme Court? Well, you know, he has the authority under the Insurrection Act. Yes, there is a fight going on in front of Congress. The problem that these guys had, the Oath Keepers and these other groups that, and all these people that they were able to drag into this thing in January 6th, the problem that they had is that the only people who were fighting them were the Capitol Police. And they sent over 140 of them to the hospital. This is, or perhaps it was just there was a total of 140 hospitalizations, but they said a bunch of, I believe it was 140 Capitol Police who went to the hospital. So would this have worked? Are we that close to losing democracy? And if the next Republican president can collaborate with one of these groups, and by the way, we want to know what happened on January 5th in the Trump Hotel, in the Trump private suite, where Republican Senator Tuberville was there, and perhaps at least one other senator. There are questions whether Josh Hawley was there or others. And, you know, Don Jr. and all these other, you know, was that a war room? Was that a planning? I mean, it sure looks to me like this was a naked attempt to end democracy in America. And if one of these neo-fascists gets into the White House in 2024, I don't even think it's a question if they'll try to repeat this. I think it's a given. And if you think I'm exaggerating, look at what's going on in Arizona right now. Look at the law that the Democrats just stopped in Texas that would have given election judges, Republican election judges, the ability to say, you know, these votes from this precinct here, where 80% of the people in the precinct are black, these votes, we think there's some fraud. We're just not going to count them. And by the way, those same provisions are in laws that have already been passed in 12 states, or provisions similar to them, and are being proposed in 47 states. We are watching the slow motion destruction of democracy in America. And we've got to stand up. We've got to push back. The Democratic Party needs to be leading that charge.